All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Janae, and I'm with NACVA and the Consultants Training Institute. Before we get started with the December 15th, 2025 edition of Around the Valuation World, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First, to obtain CP credit for this webcast, please answer all the poll questions that pop up on your screen. If you have a subscription to AVW, you'll receive the CP certificate within 7 to 10 business days after today's webcast. If you have any questions on this webcast, please use the chat feature. It's also be directed to the presenter and myself. Please also feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about NACVA or any technical questions about the webcast. With Around the Valuation World, we try to cover all the hot topics in the industry. Within the 2 hours each month, we don't have enough time to cover all the information. So there are links in your materials where you can go and read more about all the upcoming topics and the hot items in the industry. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mel, I believe, first. Mel and Alina are our editors today, and I think he is going to be getting us started today.
Thank you so much, Chinda, and welcome to everyone. Welcome to the December program, and happy holidays to all of you. And hope it's a wonderful one. So we have an amazing lineup. These are the correspondents that we work with on a regular basis throughout the year, and we couldn't do this without them. And our lineup today, we're going to start off with Janae Castell talking about industry headlines and updates and the things that you need to look deeper into. She will then actually be interviewing Carla Nunes and Jim Harrington around economic updates, which is always a powerful segment. And then James Ewart will be talking with Terry Lloyd about the body of knowledge, who owns the customers, the value of interests in service firms, some nuances there. And then a crowd favorite is our perspectives from the bench. Michael Kaplan will be spending some time with our honorable judges to talk about the intersection of AI and the federal rules of evidence. And then Brien Jones will give us a rundown of the year in review for NACVA and GACVA. And then we'll close it off with the Grow and Build Your Brand segment with Roberto Castro and Michael Hill talking about risk transfer through in insurance. So our first segment is Janae Castell. Janae has been in the valuation industry for many, many years and doing a lot of work in personal goodwill and corporate and local startups and everything. She's going to go into the body of knowledge and some industry updates for us. Janae, I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Mel. Happy to be here. Again, we have a lot of headlines to go through for this month, so we'll be quick about it. We've got an article from the Business Valuation Update, Beware of Valuation Experts Bearing De-Risked Cash Flows, First Brands and the saga of their bankruptcy in the quick read. We have the expert witness email blunders that can sink your case, which was also in the quick read. We had artificial intelligence or artificial interference, an interesting article in quick read. Yes, there is a lot of AI this month, and I honestly try to not load it up with too much AI. You should see the spreadsheet to that end, but here we are, lots of AI. In BV Wire, there were a couple of articles. First, a failed sale doesn't set the value in a divorce case, and also expert witness challenged over use of AI tool. Finally, we rounded out with embracing AI in economic testimony, integrating tools with caution and validation from the Value Examiner by Richard Eichmann. So our takeaways: can modeling hedging provide risk-free cash flow projections? The recent collapse of First Brands may have ripple effects. Carefully consider communications to avoid future headaches and embarrassment. Does the use of AI evidence challenge legal integrity? Do unconsummated offers, if they lack substance to indicate value, they at the very least must be at arm's length, current, and reflective of fair market value? When used and disclosed properly, AI doesn't kill an expert witness's credibility and reliability, and AI tools present powerful efficiencies as well as significant professional obligations. Okay, so with respect to de-risked cash flows, In the BV Update article, Daniel Patino warned against de-risked cash flows, a concept that appears to be born out of IFRS 13, certainty equivalent cash flows. For commodity selling businesses, hedging can provide lower variability in financial projections, but the author explores if this equates to completely removing the risk or de-risking the cash flows so far as to warrant the use of a discount rate approaching the risk-free rate. His opinion is skeptical, concluding that there remains a meaningful amount of variability in the projected cash flows after hedging a unit price. The author also considers whether the certainty equivalent cash flows, or method 1, in IFRS 13 is applicable in every situation. Patino's work may also interest practitioners looking at valuations of companies with pricing contracts in place with customers. So check it out. The first brand saga. This is a series of articles that Michael has put together spanning October into December. So First Brands is a significant auto parts manufacturer that has recently entered Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The core issue under investigation is off-balance sheet factoring arrangements, which may have led to the concealment of liabilities or the overstatement of assets on the annual financial statements. Forensics professionals must determine if the company engaged in fraudulent practices, such as potentially factoring the same invoice to more than one lender. Pactor has done a series of articles, so you can check those out in the quick read, as I mentioned, from October into December. The articles discuss bankruptcy court, specialized financial or financing arrangements, and how they go awry, and how the investigation may proceed. Email communications. All right. Discoverability rules vary by jurisdiction and are even further complicated by the type of venue. Think arbitration. Assume anything that you write could end up displayed in court or read aloud in a deposition. The author gives an entertaining but wickedly on point list of email content that could haunt you, as well as specific strategies and practices to protect your credibility. It's really worth a read to kind of just go through, make sure that you're not putting anything in your email or text that could be problematic later. Also, some things that are just maybe you hadn't thought about, but are a good practice. Some of my favorites were phrases such as, "This approach gives the highest damages figure when responding to an attorney," or "Let me know what number you're looking for." And finally, quote, "I think there are mistakes here, but don't have the time or energy to figure it out at this moment." Avoid putting these kinds of things in your emails. Your future self will thank you for your restraint. It's a fun article. Artificial intelligence or artificial interference. The article by Matt Feinberg presents an example of a case where the family of a homicide victim created an AI-generated victim impact statement, which was used at sentencing. The author raises the question, if AI can be used for victim impact statements to create or approximate facts, to manipulate emotion, or to drive outcomes, it could open the door to risks of undue influence and unfairness in the judicial process. The scope of AI's use is expanding, so be ready. Expect to be challenged on your use of AI. In the article, the author calls for litigants to challenge any expert opinion where AI was used to assist in the formation or drafting of such an opinion, and to make those topics a primary focus of deposition. Even if you are not using AI, expect that your opponents will. Perhaps have a new reason for professional skepticism about things given to you by your retaining counsel that could have been generated by AI. Maybe ask an AI about a tactful way to approach that conversation if you have doubts. Anyway, interesting article from a little bit different perspective. So finally, an Arkansas divorce case required the valuation of the wife's company. Husband's expert argued that a prior offer to buy the company should influence the valuation. The wife's expert noted several factors that made the offer irrelevant for the divorce valuation. In addition to the deal not being consummated, the buyer had synergistic motivations. The proposed deal included real estate assets that weren't part of the divorce valuation, and the company's profitability had declined as a result of a client merger since the offer. The court favored the wife's expert's analysis, and as a result, as a result, valued the company at $10 million. The appellate court affirmed. Okay. So pretty reasonable result. We like to see things that make sense in the courts. A 2025 case, Fairlito versus Harbor Freight Tools USA, Inc. Was a products liability lawsuit, and Harbor Freight's legal team pointed out that the plaintiff's expert had no engineering degree, had limited experience with manual tools, and most notably, had consulted ChatGPT while preparing his report. This wasn't a valuation report, but it's an expert witness using AI, so perhaps relevant for your practice. The Harbor Freight legal team alleged that the use of ChatGPT undermined the credibility of his methods. However, the court found that the expert had necessary experience that qualified him as an expert, and that such limited, disclosed AI use did not affect the reliability of his testimony. The court warned against experts abdicating their independent judgment, but in this case, they felt like it was adequately disclosed, it was checked and just used as assistance, and it wasn't used to be the basis of his opinion without confirmation. So his testimony was admissible. Okay. Large language models, or LLMs, do not understand what they read. Their output has more to do with statistical patterns rather than comprehension or genuine understanding. They don't replace modeling platforms for data analysis, according to the author. But LLMs can help draft pieces of a report or help you to craft responses that don't leave judges, juries, and others with confused, glazed over eyes. They may be useful in analyzing documents, which we've discussed on this show before. Of course, all outputs need to be treated as tentative rather than conclusive, and judgment and responsibility cannot be delegated. So this article and the previous case, I think, go hand in hand. Your work has still got to be replicable and transparent. You've got to take ownership of it. Next up, we've got a lightning round. I had a whole bunch of cases that really were, a whole bunch of articles that really were worth a look, but we're just going to quickly touch. The October 2025 issue of Mercer's Capital Value Matters summarized considerations when estate planning and M&A overlap. They highlighted a webinar available on YouTube, and I believe I have that linked in the slide deck. There's also a complimentary article that appeared in the August issue of Value Matters. There's an important article in the October 22nd quick read, which details the updated valuation guidance for 7A and 504 loans, which you may refer to them as SBA loans. SBA SOP 5010-8 went into effect June 1st, 2025. There was also a case in Alaska centered on goodwill valuation. Rather than quibbling over which methodology was more proper, the court focused on the expert who understood the way the company operated and the owner's role in the company. This is Johnston versus Adkins. And then finally, use a flesh test for readability of your reports. In the article in BB Wire there, it gives you steps in case you're not sure how to do this to make your reports improved. Okay, here's the links for additional resources should you wish to go and find these articles. Lots of good stuff out recently, so much to read. So with that, go ahead and grab your attendance check, and we are going to flow into the next segment with Carla and Jem. And Carla and Jem, so glad to have you. It's wonderful to have your insight. Looking forward to seeing what you have to say about our global economics upcoming. If you would like, you want to go ahead and take over a share, you can replace mine. That's fine.
Yes, unless you.
If you want me
it's
to
up
click
to
through,
you.
I can.
let me share.
Great, great.
Okay. All right.
So,
Because that will. All right. Share.
so Carla and Jim are obviously at Kroll. They've been doing this a number of years and updating us on around the valuation world for about every 6 months. I'm going to let them roll because there's never enough time to hear all the things that you guys have to say. So I'll let you just take over and go with it, Carla, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and get started. And again, happy holidays to everyone if we don't talk until, the end of the year. But we are sort of doing here a quick update on what we did in June. In June, we were worried about the impact of tariffs and the one big beautiful bill on the budget deficit and the national debt of the United States. And the reason being, from a valuation standpoint, is that if there is too much debt, we have evidence, academic evidence, that that increases long-term interest rates. And so our base for any valuation that uses the risk-free rate will be impacted. This is just a little update, from, the Tax Foundation that shows you revisions to their estimates of how much revenue would be brought in to the national coffers under the one big beautiful bill versus what the tariff revenue would be. Now, of course, the OBBBA revenue is negative, right? So it's expected to take away, $4 to $5 trillion in negative revenue over the next 10 years. And that's depending on whether you do a conventional basis or a dynamic basis. So dynamic being takes into account the impact on GDP growth and interest expense paid by the government, whereas the conventional basis is just static. And so the tariff revenues have been coming down quite a bit from what they were expected to be. And part of that is a combination of new trade agreements that have, reached an agreement for a lower tariff rate for a lot of products. There's been a de-escalation of the trade environment, even though every once in a while things spike up again when the administration is not happy with some factor or another, but certainly these have been de-escalated. And particularly the China tariffs have come down quite significantly. So the bottom line is that this is the Tax Foundation's estimates. There's others. There's the Yale Budget Club. There's the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. Either way, you're talking about $2 to $3 trillion short over the next 10 years if the tariffs stay as they are today. And the Tax Foundation estimates that the average effective tariff rate is around 11.2% at this point, which is much lower than at the just immediately after Liberation Day. It was closer to 18%, depending on who was estimating it. But importantly, and the reason why I'm putting this here is that in January, things can change quite dramatically. Because if the IEEPA, so the International Emergency Economics Powers Act, is ruled illegal by the Supreme Court, then the tariffs that stayed would be only 4.6%. So our expectation is that if they are ruled illegal, the administration will probably find other ways to do sectorial tariffs, because those the administration has the power, the president has the power to impose those. Bottom line for valuations is that unfortunately there's still no clear cut of what to do, and the projections are critical to see whether or not the tariffs are impacting the particular business that you are valuing. Because it changes, from day to day, week to week, month to month, and in January is a time that you want to be looking out for that to see what happens. Now, with all this uncertainty and the government shutdown, which was the longest on record, we have very, very little updated economic data that we would want to have by now. This shows you the US quarterly real GDP growth on an annualized basis through Q2, so the second quarter of 2025. The third quarter by now would have come out if it wasn't for the government shutdown. But instead, we have to wait until the 23rd of December for that number to come out. By all accounts, the Q3 was strong. You have to look at Q1 and Q2 sort of as a blended average because we had a significant impact of export acceleration in Q1, and then that dropped in Q2. And so this is not a good way of forecasting the future and compare your company's projections against the overall economy. It's really hard right now. But the one thing that a lot of pundits are saying is that if it wasn't for AI, we wouldn't have had even this level of growth. That would be significantly negative. So we took a look. We took a look at the data. It's not very easy to find the data to really ascertain how much of that contribution of those numbers. So I'm going to go back to the other numbers. So think about minus 0.6% Q1, 3.8 in Q2. How much of that was related to AI? There is some data sources that you can see in the GDP data related to data centers, but believe it or not, in real terms, the data centers was actually negligible contribution in real terms. So what really contributed somewhat is computer equipment and peripherals and software. And so those green and dark blue lines show you the combined impact of for that particular quarter of AI. And again, it's a little bit of a simplification because companies could be buying software for other reasons other than AI. But at most, AI contributed to real growth of about 1% to overall GDP, which means that in Q1, yes, GDP growth will be really a lot more negative. So the other category is minus 1.5. But in Q2, there's a lot other things contributing to real GDP growth. So 2.8%. So one thing to not forget is, as of now, the consumer still represents about 2/3 of the US economy. So let's not, neglect focusing on what the consumers are doing and spending and just put all of our eggs in the AI basket, because that is probably a little bit misleading. As I said, for Q3, growth is probably going to be quite strong still. But we would expect Q4 for things to decelerate because of the government shutdown had impact not just in the government spending, but also even with contractors, with air travel, with a number of other businesses. So we're going to see a lot of noise in the economic data even through next year in 2026. So we'll be talking about this again. Now, a lot of people are thinking like, well, are we living in an AI bubble? Some people look at this thing called the Shiller's CAPE ratio, or the cyclically adjusted P ratio for the S&P 500. And what this Nobel Prize winner puts out, he puts more than one measure, but this was the first one he put together, which it really just says, hey, what if I adjust the year, last 10 years of earnings for the S&P 500 and do an inflation adjustment to come up with a P ratio that is more stable, because earnings in any given year might be very volatile. And so what we're seeing here is the long-term average since 1900, when it put together, is the dotted horizontal line of in blue, light blue, which was 17.8. That was that PE ratio. And then you see another post-World War II average, which is around 20.6. So like even if you call it 21%, but of course now we are at 40. And so when were we that high? That was just before the internet bubble burst. A lot of analysts use this to explain on why you might living through an AI bubble. Now, Jim will talk a little bit about the S&P 500 and how it's been doing, but it is very possible that, and we already saw in the last few weeks of trading, that there's been a rotation away from AI trade and into other companies and other businesses, because there's concerns that maybe however AI is going to be so enhancing to productivity, there may be some circularity in all of these big companies and hyperscalers investing in each other. It's hard to tell how much really it's actually being invested net and how much productivity they'll be really adding to earnings of companies. So this has been like really difficult for the Fed to make decisions without all of this data, right? What's going on with GDP, and importantly for their mandate, they look at both inflation and employment. And so on inflation, the October 25 report was canceled. So they missed out on that because of the government shutdown. And now they're going to do the November is going to be released, this week on Thursday. So we'll have the November numbers, although things are a little later than they would have normally. But some of the voting members of the FOMC committee, what they're worried about is there was a trend down on inflation up to April 25, and then it has been ticking up. So that's not a good direction, right? So we're talking about CPI being at 3% now, and the target for the Fed is 2%. And their preferred method, which is called the Personal Consumption Expenditure, or PC index, is also up, even though it's not as much, it's at 2.8. So again, it's going in the right direction. So they have to think about what other inflationary pressures are there, and is the trend going to reverse? Now, they're still convinced that they can reverse it, the Fed, but this is what they're worried about. How long will tariffs impact prices? And so this shows you from December 2024, the end, until September 2025. So it's a cumulative. How much have prices increased in those 9 months? Because remember, we don't have October, and November is only coming out later this week. So we don't have that data. So these are the top 15 categories that had the most inflation since the beginning of the year. And the reds or oranges, whatever that color is, they're related to tariffs, and the blues are not. So a lot of the blues, believe it or not, is related to problems that the country has had with beef, with cattle. That there's a lot of supply chain issues, and those are unrelated to tariffs. But in the top like three categories, you do have coffee and audio equipment, and then of course the things that you look at: apparel and jewelry and watches. So a number of those have seen quite significant, 10 to 16% increase in 9 months. But it's not across the board, and so you're not seeing that impact in all prices. But certainly there is an impact here that the Fed has to look at in terms of inflation. And the flip side is the employment. And so I'm going to give Jim, hopefully I'm able to, I'm not sure, Jim, I'm going to give you slide control so you can move the slides, and hopefully you can, yeah, oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Oops.
You can skip this one. Fine.
Okay. Non-farm payrolls, that's what we're talking about here. This usually comes out early in the month on a Friday. The last one we got was September. Non-farm payroll additions, new jobs, since the beginning of the year has averaged about 75,000 jobs per year, which is really muted compared with what we usually see, which is somewhere around double that. So it has been muted. Something else unusual that's gone on is the revisions. We're seeing a lot of downward revisions. every March, as a matter of fact, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, puts out a revision for the previous 12 months. So if we look at those for the last 3 years, from March 2023 to March 2025, there's been nearly, or maybe about 2 million jobs that the BLS has erased that they originally reported. That's sort of the big takeaway from these two slides. The revisions have caused a lot of uncertainty in the market. It's like flying blind. It's decreased the faith that people have in the numbers. They've gone to alternative things like Moody's, et cetera, to get those numbers from. So those have been muted, the revisions have been larger than they usually are. And also the sheer number of new jobs added has been really muted all through 2025 at about 75,000 per year. The unemployment rate has ticked up from about 4% at the beginning of the year to 4.4% in September. Again, it's the last numbers we've got. That still sort of pales in comparison to, for instance, the big spike we saw during COVID, which hit 14.8%. And those of you with longer memories remember the 10% we hit in the 2008-2009 financial crisis, global financial crisis. But the 4.4% is still significantly below the last 20-year average, monthly average, which is around 5.5–6%. So we're still sort of decent, even though it is a little bit up from the beginning of the year, from 4 to 4.4%. We're still well below, really historically, over the last couple decades, what it's been. This is the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. It's been around for a long, long time. That dotted line is the average for the last almost 40 years, 84.2. You can see as of November 2025, it's at 51. That did recover from its record low of 50 back in June 2022. But if you remember what happened in June 2022, inflation hit 9.1%, and people were really miserable. And so it hit the all-time low, record low consumer confidence as of that date. Still, November 2025 is below the in COVID what it was. It was 71.8 back there in the COVID days in April of 2020, the spring of 2020. Something interesting is that in May 2024, the University of Michigan did change the way they collect this data. They changed to web surveys. And I have no idea how that would affect the overall, the overall index, whether it's measuring or it's apples to apples before the old way of collecting to the new way of collecting. One thing that, you could make an argument that the people that take the time to get on their keyboards and fill out a web survey are the ones that really have a gripe. So maybe the people that are filling it out are just really, they've got an axe to grind, and, so it's depressing those numbers. I have no idea. That's just a theory.
Well, actually, no. There's some analysts that do say that the web surveys have really impacted negatively, precisely for what you said.
I do think it's because the people that take the time to fill out a web survey are usually the ones that they're not people that offer a compliment. Don't take the time to fill out a web survey. Somebody that's ticked off, they take the time. I don't know.
Right.
Okay, next up, let's see what we got. Oh, hey, this is a really cool tool. It's called the CME FedWatch, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange FedWatch tool, the CME. And what they do is they based upon the federal funds futures. I used to be in the bond options pit right beside the Fed options future. It was a little tiny pit. at that time. But they base these probabilities off of what the futures are trading for Fed funds. And right now, we just had another decrease of 25 basis points in December. We're down to 350 to 375. That's the new range. But the bet is based upon the CME Fed Watch. Most people, there's about an 80% chance, 77.9 chance that there will be another decrease in January. As a matter of fact, for all of 2025, based upon the information available on this tool, the CME Fed Watch, really investors are only seeing about 2 rate hikes, rate decreases in 2025, down to around 3 to 325. That's really the overall
in 2026.
2026. For 2026, at the end of 2026, this tool tells us that the odds-on bet is that rate is going to be, the range will be 3 to 325. So that's about 2 25 basis point rate cuts in 2026 expected.
And so the one thing very quickly, the Fed, was really thinking, what am I going to do with the inflation pressures and the slowing down of the employment situation, which they have. The Fed Chair Powell said at this press conference, it just happened last week, said that they actually think that the employment situation is worse, that maybe 0 jobs have been created. And so they reached the point where they're no longer going to decrease the size of their balance sheet. And in fact, they're going to engage in purchasing short-term treasury securities, at least for 1 month, like between December and January, of another 40 billion in the first month, and then they'll decide whether or not. But it tells you that they are, when it comes to the policy rate cuts and the risk-free rate, they are concerned that with all the debt that it's being issued by the government, and with the Fed reducing the size of their balance sheet, that there could be disruption to the treasury market and spikes on interest rates. So in order to give some more liquidity to markets, they said, well, we're going to buy some more T-bills, and then we'll see what happens to see if we have to inject more liquidity into the system. So back to those who have heard us before talk about this, once you start quantitative easing or QE, it's like a drug. It's really addictive. It's really hard to get out of it. So what's the impact on markets from this rate cut? Let's see, Jim, your next slide.
It's funny that's why we sort of saw the market go up generally since they announced that, because it's sort of a form of QE. It's sort of a form of QE, and that's how the market interpreted it, even though everybody from the Fed is like, this is not QE. But yeah,
that's right, exactly.
Not decreasing the balance sheet and buying a bunch of short end stuff is still going to have the effect of putting dampening upward pressure, increasing downward pressure, actually, I should say more directly, to interest rates. And that's how the market interpreted it, even though it's short-lived. Here we have the S&P 500 year to date, and I put all the things, the trade deals and some other events on there. You can see that through December 8th of 2025, the market was up 16.4% as measured by the S&P, a little bit more in the NASDAQ, I think, but that's pretty strong. You can see it over on the left hand, sort of in the middle there. Remember April 2nd when the tariffs were announced and the S&P dropped 12.1% in just a week. And then on April 8th or April 9th, technically April 8th after close, they announced that, oh yeah, we're going to back off those tariffs, and things seem to rebound quite a bit. And it's sort of been on an upward march since then.
And Jim, we're being asked to sort of wrap up. Do you
Okay.
want to just do you want to just highlight the Meg 7?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, here's something. This is sort of interesting. The big sector this year is communications and information technology and stuff like that.
No,
Consumer
it's actually not.
staples.
It's not actually. Information technology is lower than communications, believe it or
Yes,
not.
it is only by a couple percentage, but it's still up
Yes.
about 19%.
Yeah.
But Carla mentioned sector rotation. Consumer staples is usually considered a defensive play. Everybody needs to eat, basically, is always the argument. And it's only up 3.3%. And I think a lot of that is just due to sort of a risk-on environment where people are saying, oh, I don't need a defensive stock. I'm going to rotate the money out of that into these more risky things like communications and stuff like that. And it's not that consumer staples are they're still selling food, but it's a sector rotation out of that into the more risky things that have caught people's eyes. Meg 7, the Meg 7, which is Apple and Google and Meta and all those other ones, the NVIDIA, Tesla, they have outperformed the S&P 500 index each year from 2021 through 2025, except for 2022, okay, considerably. Here we go. But you can see that usually a lot of that came from NVIDIA, okay? But you can see that in 2025, that Alphabet is actually the biggest contributor to Mag 7 gains, whereas before, for years, it had been NVIDIA that was the big tent pole that propped up the Mag 7. This year, it's Alphabet. And as we know, just a couple of weeks ago, Alphabet is announcing all kinds of things that they're investing in the AI space. They've been doing that for well over a year or 2 years, but they made some big announcements for some investments and into chips and things. And that sort of muted NVIDIA's gains, and Alphabet's in the lead now.
So I think this concludes our update. Thank you for giving us your time, and on to the next segment.
Yes, thank you very much. Everyone have a wonderful Christmas holiday season.
Thank you, Carla and James. How y'all doing? Thank you again. It's my pleasure to introduce Terry Lloyd, who has a session that's going to immediately follow the ABW this afternoon, entitled "Who Owns the Clients? Valuing an Interest in a Professional Service Firm." Terry specializes in financial issues and business valuation. He's got over 40 years of practice, and he's valued over 1,000 business entities or assets for various reasons. He covers companies and asset sizes of all sizes. Terry's qualified in federal, state, bankruptcy, and tax courts. He's arbitration forums and international arbitration court of damages and valuation issues. He has served as a special master and is an arbitrator for the American Arbitration Association, FINRA, and under court appointments as well. So welcome, Terry. You're no stranger to ABW, and thank you for being here. And we're looking forward to your presentation that follows ABW this afternoon. But let's discuss some of the areas that you'll be covering this afternoon. We've got roughly 15 minutes to do that. So in looking at at the areas that you'll be covering in your presentation, and looking at the program for your outline of your program, it suggests that you'll be revisiting one fundamental issue in valuation, in valuing of professional services firms. And I'm curious as to what is that and why is it critical?
Thank you. First of all, You did an excellent job reading my mother's handwriting in the introduction. Not everybody can get that. But the one fundamental question we'll be addressing briefly here and in more detail in the extended session is there a firm there? Is there a business apart from a bunch of people practicing together? We'll dive into that in more detail, but that's the real question. If you've got 5 people sharing an office and basically keeping their own book or their own revenues and sharing some overhead or back office, even if you may have 50 people in that kind of arrangement, is there a firm there? And that's kind of a foundational question, because if we're valuing my interest or your interest in the consulting practice or the LLC or whatever it is, if there's not really a firm there, then the value of the equity is usually fairly easily determined. It's the book value, it's liquidation value, it's whatever we have agreed to upon separation. If a firm, if an entity gets over a certain size, number of employees, revenue, profitability, and people are actually making money off the investment and not just their individual services, then there's a firm and there might be something beyond book value. Fundamental question, is there a firm there or just a bunch of people in the same office?
So does that same logic flow for estate and gift as well as income tax matters? I would think that family law, as you just mentioned, is probably much different.
Yeah, and the difference is there, and the fundamental question applies across those. The real difference in those different areas is standard of value. In a divorce case, it might be a pro rata value, it might be an apportioned value. In California, they call that fair value or a pro rata of the entirety. In estate and gift, it's fair market value, and that is what would somebody pay for my 25% interest in a 4-person firm. Fair market value, as we all know, generally tends to be lower than a pro rata of the entirety. And candidly, Jim, if it's an estate and gift issue, we rarely see the value of a service firm in estate and gift matters. If the practitioner is no longer alive, it's pretty much book value, and they're going to pay that out if the estate can get the money out of the firm, something like that. Much more common is divorce, and so state law applies there. The standard of value will determine or define how that's calculated. Again, in California, it says the outspouse is entitled to the fair value, which the cases show is generally pro rata of the whole.
So I guess stakeholder agreements and I call them stakeholder agreements, shareholder agreements, and the like. I would suspect that they would leak into this to some extent. I know that some courts recognize them and some courts don't.
Again, we'll talk about this in more detail in an hour, but the question there is there an agreement in place and what does it provide for? Foundational is whether there's a firm or not. And the next step is there an agreement in place? Because if I'm getting divorced, if it's my estate, or there's some kind of a shareholder dispute, if you and I as partners can't agree and I want out, is there a defining methodology or calculation or value that governs? And again, regardless of the standard of value, if somebody says this interest can be paid out over 5 years without interest, or something like that, or if it's vague, if they've used some default language and said the value of a deceased partner is equal to the fair market value of that interest or the fair value, well, now we're going to fight. But once we define the interest and the standard of value, honestly, Jim, and I'm interested in your opinion, but I think 60, 75, maybe 80% of the task is over once we've clearly defined what the interest is, what the standard of value is, and whether or not there's even a firm. Until a firm gets above 50 million in revenue, 50 employees, 10 principals, partners, things like that, it's hard to argue there's really a firm. If it hasn't been around for more than 10 years, arguably, I just got capital in there so that I can practice there. And that capital, a lot of times, is just financing the receivables. But there again, I'd like to know what you think about that. It's hard to argue there's a firm there, there's some residual value to an equity holder if we haven't met those kind of conditions.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I don't know that I have any hard and fast, bright line tests that once you get here, you're that necessarily. I think they're all facts and circumstances. But the points that you're bringing up are the fundamental points that need to be addressed. These models, even in very large law firms that have an eat what you kill model, there's few of those that left. There's still some sprinkle in that, but even there's got to be some at some point that there's value attributable to that amalgamation of all those eat what you kill lawyers that are practicing law under that firm's umbrella, that there is some value that is cheats down to the individual lawyers that has value outside of themselves.
I agree with you on both points. The second one first is that once you get to a certain size and there's a good capital base and all those kinds of things, there is some value for being at the firm. The practitioner might have received distributions of $800,000 or $900,000 or $1 million last year, yet they only billed $400,000 or $500,000 or $600,000, or the formula, the eat what you kill model, would have only given them $700,000 or $800,000. So there is something for building a firm. And going back to your first point, I do agree completely. No hard and fast rules. We'll talk about this in detail. There are lists, things called the multivariate theory about, are there brand names, is there intellectual property, stuff like that. But, and we'll quote him again in the longer segment. Some of you may remember that Justice Potter Stewart, famously on the Supreme Court many years ago, was asked, how do you define pornography? And his answer was, I know it when I see it. And so we're going to borrow a little bit from that idea. And there are lists and there are indicia of value, but with you, I'm with you. If we get to a certain point, then there's a firm there, and then we can talk about that. We'll talk about the math, the qualitative factors, the quantitative factors in that extended session. But once you do get to a certain size, there's something there, and there's some value in the equity beyond book value because it's producing income.
Yeah. And well, you've got employees, right? You've got systems and processes, you've got some centralized functions and those kinds of things that add value to the ability to perform, whether or not that should be recognizable to the extent that you've got a saleable interest. And I believe that's something else you're probably going to talk about today too, right?
We'll talk about those.
Saleable.
Most people attending this program are familiar with the phrases personal goodwill, enterprise goodwill. I bring my reputation to the practice, whatever it may be, large or small. I'm a big rainmaker. I'm just another cog in the wheel. And we marry the firm's reputation to my reputation, and then we split the benefit of that. But we'll also talk in detail about what is personal goodwill, what is enterprise goodwill. We will talk in a little bit of detail about Anderson, formerly Arthur Anderson, a large firm for many years, highly profitable, well-regarded, dissolved in 2001, and sometime later this week, maybe coming back in an IPO for $175 million. So firms come and go, and in this case, one has been resurrected.
Wow. Yeah. Good to hear. Well, we've got about four minutes left, but one thing that I'm really glad to hear that you're going to cover this afternoon in your presentation, and I'll let you describe what it is. But my question is that, we hear that when experts disagree, triers of fact, they may rely on something other than what?
The unfortunate fact for people like us, those attending this program, is a lot of what we do can be fairly confusing. And both the judges and Michael Kaplan may address this specifically later on. But what I've heard from practitioners, from triers of fact, having been an arbitrator, and the academic research says people are more likely to agree with you if they understand what it is you're saying. If you just want to impress them with vocabulary and calculations and things like that, they might agree with you or they might not, but they're more likely to, and that includes even relatively sophisticated judges. They're more likely to agree with you if they understand what it is you're saying. And the second part is they will evaluate whether or not you really know the business. And that goes beyond a site visit. Have you talked to people? Have you tried the product? Have you wandered around? Have you looked at the consumer surveys? We spent many years visiting facilities that manufactured styrofoam cups, in part because my client, a tax lawyer, if it came to that, wanted to be able to say he's visited facilities on 3 different continents, he's talked to people, he's talked to customers and employees and things like that. But that expert is generally more successful if they know and understand the business and can explain it.
There's no question that there's case after case after case that supports that right there. If you know the business that you're valuing and can portray that and explain that to the court, and the court in a manner that the court understands and recognizes you do have that knowledge. Case law supports the fact that judges go to those that can demonstrate knowledge and be able to communicate it. And so we're looking forward to this afternoon. Is there any in the next minute and a half? Do you have anything else that you'd like to say about the program this afternoon?
Just very briefly to mention that we will also talk about what is called Brand U. We'll talk about personal goodwill and enterprise goodwill from a conceptual standpoint, and then along in line with what will happen in this segment around the world later on, talk about building your own brand, increasing the value of your own brand. I see that Judge Driscoll, like the ghost of Christmas future, is kind of hovering there waiting for us, and so we'll get his opinion. We see you. We'll get his opinion on how to evaluate experts and things like that. But again, the calculations, once we pass those fundamental questions, calculations can be fairly straightforward about calculating the value of an equity interest in a service firm across many kinds of industries. But once we've framed it correctly, what is the interest? What is the standard of value? And understanding the business, the math is actually, I believe, the easiest part.
Very good. Well, thank you again for taking on the program this afternoon. We look forward to it. Thank you for being part of AVW.
Thank you for inviting me, and happy holidays to everyone.
Very good. Very good. So, Elena, is it back to you, or are we going? Where are we going from here?
Really quick, James. I'll just cover a few items. We just have a few minutes before our next segment.
Okay.
But thank you, Terry, and thank you, James, for joining us today. And if you are interested in joining the webinar that Terry is hosting later on today, there is a slide, or you can scan that QR code, or also visit www.nacv.com/avwindepth to register for that event. Does sound like a very interesting topic. And really quick, we just have a few items. We have a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and play a quick video.
News and updates from the Global Association. The association boasts groundbreaking artificial intelligence and machine learning resources released within the last 2 years.
For over 3 decades, NACVA has set the benchmark for professional excellence in the industry. Building on this legacy, the association boasts a suite of artificial intelligence resources released over the past 2 years. Established in March 2023, the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Commission is comprised of representatives from the association's member-elected Executive Advisory, Leadership Initiative, Standards, and Ethics Oversight Boards. The Commission focuses on synthesizing the extensive AI knowledge base into clear, practical guidance, aiding in the professional and ethical integration of AI innovations into valuation and litigation practice. It is the global profession's first body to be forward-thinking about the application of artificial intelligence in practice. Published in October 2024, the association's inaugural advisory brief, The Use of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, is the first AI-oriented professional guidance published by a valuation professional organization. It serves as a guide for the appropriate use of AI and machine learning in valuation and forensic practice, and utilizes a principles-based approach for integrating technologies, firmly upholding the association's professional standards. Launched in April 2025, the AI webinar series already includes over a dozen recently developed sessions. More than 1,750 registrants have attended these trainings. With a continued focus on practical application to valuation and forensic practice, sessions will be presented every 2 weeks, after which they will be produced for the association's CPE on-demand library. AI Data University, announced in the second quarter of 2025, is a robust library vetted by the AIMLC that tracks, categorizes, and catalogs the vast amount of AI data, information, and tools being constantly released. Quick Read, the association's weekly technical blog, introduced a column dedicated to AI in April 2025. Plans are to continue publishing articles every 2 weeks. These achievements continue NACVA's tradition as being the first to market with tools that shape the future of the global profession. Access to these resources are available through the association's website. Following NACVA's example, other valuation professional organizations have established leadership bodies, published similar guidance, and have produced AI training and resource tools.
News and
Great. Yeah, as Janae mentioned, there is a lot of information on AI in the industry right now. For more information, there's the QR code that'll take you to our resources, AI resources and webinar series. So you go visit that. And also just want to let you know that there is an AI bootcamp that is coming up early next year in February. So if you're interested in that, there's a QR code there as well. And I'm going to hand it over to Mel so we can remain on schedule.
Awesome. Thank you, Chinda. I'm just wondering if the AI bootcamp is taught by humans or AI. I don't know, but we'll find out. So on to our next segment, which is actually one of my favorite segments because the wealth of knowledge here is incredible. Talking to our honorable judges, and Michael Kaplan is going to be interviewing them, talking about the role of AI and the federal rules of evidence and how they intersect. So, Michael, you on? Mr. Kaplan. He was here earlier.
There I am.
There you are. All right, my friend.
I was too focused on sharing my screen and getting to the slide deck, but
I get it. I get it. So I'll let you take it away. Introduce our judges panel and take it from here.
Very good. Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you are. We are pleased today to have with us 2 of our 3 favorite judges, Judge Timothy Driscoll from Nassau County, New York. He is a trial judge, and he's done many programs with us at the NACVA and will be doing many more, including an upcoming financial litigation experts boot camp that we're doing in Salt Lake in February. So if it's of interest to you, Judge Driscoll will be there. And we also have Judge Christopher Yates, who has been working with us for many years, an appellate court judge from the state of Michigan, And both of these judges, both Judge Yates and Judge Driscoll, have contributed so much to our programs, and we are always, just always thrilled to have them here and to enable them to participate and teach us things that we wouldn't get otherwise. Unfortunately, Judge Platt wasn't able to join us, but we will see him next time. I'm not going to say anything about myself. We live in this wonderful world with artificial intelligence, and many of us don't know what to do with it. We know that it can do some wonderful things. It can save us time. It can write reports for us. It can do research. It can reach out and grab the latest standards, put all the stuff together. And it can also get us into trouble. It can also get us into trouble by hallucinating, by taking into account information that really isn't there, by filling in the gaps, and by putting us in a position where we walk into the courtroom, thinking that we are fully prepared and we've got all this wonderful stuff, and then opposing counsel starts chiseling away at what we've done and highlighting what came from artificial intelligence that we may or may not have verified on our own. And maybe there's some errors, there are some things that are misleading. So today we are going to hear from the judges. We're going to hear from our judges as to how all of this fits together with the federal rules of evidence, particularly Federal Rule of Evidence 702. Now, let me just do a quick run through what the current Federal Rule of Evidence 702 tells us, because, I mean, it really puts together those things that we need to do to overcome that hurdle, to get our admission ticket into the courtroom and on the witness stand. And I'm going to read, I don't like to read slides, but this is right out of the rule. Federal Rule of Evidence 702. A witness who is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education may testify in the form of an opinion or otherwise. And this is the difficult part. If the people on your side of the case, retaining counsel and his or her clients, if the proponent demonstrates to the court that it is more likely than not, preponderance of evidence, more likely than not, that the expert's scientific, technical, or other special knowledge, will help the trier of fact to understand the evidence or to determine a fact in issue. Just think about that. Remember, when I as an expert, when you as an expert, when any of us take the witness stand and we're sworn in, who is our client? Who is our client from that point on? According to the federal rules of evidence, the judge is our client in a bench trial, and the jurors are our clients in a jury trial. And we are there to help them understand the evidence or determine a fact. That's it. That's why we are there. The evidence is based upon sufficient facts or data. I mean, do we have evidence, or did we do a dance and did we hallucinate? Did we put something together that is just a wish list or pie in the sky? Based upon sufficient facts or data. C, the testimony is the product of reliable principles and methods. Did we use good methodology? Does the methodology that we use meet the Daubert tests or the expanded Daubert test? Just, think about that. So we've got data, good evidence, and then we have reliable principles. And then the last one that puts it all together, the expert's opinion reflects a reliable application of the principles and methods to the fact of the case. Did we do our work properly? Some experts come in there and they say they use this method or that method, and they have different facts, and they blow a lot of smoke and they tell stories and abracadabra, bingo, this is the conclusion. We can't do it. There needs to be a reliable application to the facts of the case in order for us to meet that standard. And this gets us our admission ticket into the courtroom. This gets us our admission ticket. Well, you know what? According to the rules of evidence, even prior to the update to 702, we had to meet these requirements. These requirements were there, but there was a belief that some of the federal judges, or many of the federal judges, were saying, you know what, we're going to let it in. We'll let the evidence in, let the jury do with it what the jury does. We'll let it go to the weight. And what that did is it took the topic, the principle of admissibility and the principle of weight, and kind of brought them together, which was not right, because admissibility is under the purview of the judge. Admissibility is for the judge, the weight is for the jury. This underscored the fact that the judges needed to pay more attention to whether the evidence is admissible, whether the expert's testimony is admissible. Okay, so just quickly getting to point A. Okay, point A, do we have the qualifications, skill, knowledge, experience, education to help the trier of fact? That's not a problem for us who are experts, who are experienced. We have the education, the credentials. Okay, sufficient facts or data can be challenging. It can be challenging. If we have missed something out there, that's an important factor data, we can be excluded as an expert. And a question that I have is, maybe the AI model that we used missed something important, something that we wouldn't have missed if we had done the work on our own, and I put that in quotes. And if it missed something, the AI model could get us into trouble. The issue of point C, which is, did we use a reliable method, a reliable accepted, a method that, that meets the standards, the Daubert standards? We just have to present it. Yes, we can do it, and we can, we subject it to our own personal judgment, our educated judgment, our experienced judgment. Related to point D, and I'm going to go back to point D because this is important. The expert's opinion reflects a reliable application of the principles and methods to the facts of the case. This is all about connecting the dots. We take the facts, we take the problem, we take the facts and data, we take the methodology, and we as experts are going to have to connect the dots as part of our protocol. So, moving to some of the questions that we have, and I'm going to bounce these questions out at our judges. How do we deal with the fact that AI, to a great degree, is a black box?
So the great thing about being a judge is you're used to asking the questions, not answering them. So I'm going to answer a couple other questions that I was thinking about during that presentation. So I hope our audience doesn't mind me going beyond the question. So the first point you made, Michael, was, well, it's not a problem for us because we do satisfy factor A of Rule 702. Well, you know what? Don't assume, as Tony Randall said to Jack Klugman in The Odd Couple 50 years ago, right? Sorry for the dated reference. But don't assume that your expertise is carrying the day unless you talk about your expertise. So I think before we even get to relying on AI, be confident in what you have, because you have skills based on your own training, based on your own experience, based on your education. And you're not even getting in the door if you don't convince me that you have that relevant knowledge. So don't overlook the importance of 702A, whether you're using AI or whether you're just using an old-fashioned calculator. The black box, so now I'll answer the question, that Michael propounded, and of course I'll stop talking, which I don't do well, but I'll stop talking and then defer to Judge Yates. The black box aspect of AI, you are not alone. Now it's a Star Trek reference. You are not alone in hoping you get that black box of AI. And you are not alone in that you ain't getting it. To quote the Wizard of Oz, not no way, not no how are you getting it. Because retaining counsel is trying to get it too. And there's some IP lawyer in AI company that you're using that is making sure you don't get it. So I don't think you have to be all that uncomfortable with the idea that you don't have that black box, because retaining counsel has already fought that battle throughout the case, and we'll be fighting that battle in other cases. So I wouldn't be as concerned about that from the perspective of, can you testify as an expert? That issue will already be addressed by retaining counsel. I think it may be an overall concern you might have, but within the context of 702, you don't have to be concerned about it. But let me just reiterate again: you have the expertise. You have to tell us about your expertise before we even get into your methodology. Judge Yates, I'm sorry I took up some more time than I thought I would. I apologize.
No, it's fine. I always appreciate you, Judge Driscoll. Let me just offer a couple thoughts, because we spent a lot of time discussing this in person a few months ago in Salt Lake City. And your greatest takeaway from this presentation should be that your report has to be your report. Don't rely on a chatbot to produce a report or even portions of a report. Ultimately, if you take the witness stand, you're going to have to defend every line in that report and explain it. Instead, think of AI like a tool. I mean, it's no different than a much more sophisticated spreadsheet. If you have a good spreadsheet, you can put the data in it, and assuming the cells are programmed properly, it'll produce results at the back end of it. AI is very similar to that, except it's willing to do more of the work for you, which is fine as an initial matter, but then you have to work your way through it and make sure that that's your work and the result you want to defend, not simply what some chatbot came up with.
So I mean, now to get to that second question, what are we looking for? We're looking for someone who can explain these complicated concepts to us. AI is a tool that can help you. If you are relying solely on AI, well, then you ain't going to be persuasive. But that's not news. If all you did was read Pratt stats, and I know it's not called Pratt stats anymore, I'm sorry, but bless Shannon Pratt's memory. If all you did was memorize Pratt stats and parroted it back to us, you wouldn't be getting anywhere either. So AI is just a tool. It's a tool that I think you have to use. I say that not just to folks like all of you who are experts. I say that when I lecture to judges. I say that when I lecture to students. I think you have to embrace that tool because it is a time saver. I think it's a time saver that retaining counsel and retaining counsels and the client will be expecting you to use to keep the costs down. And I just, as a side note, I just note in today's Wall Street Journal, there was an article about the demise of the billable hour, right? Great thing in the legal profession that great. I put that in quotes, but this amazing thing, and we're moving instead to task-based billing. So again, it's a tool that your clients may, or the clients may expect you to use, but ultimately, if you rely only on that AI tool, just like if you only parroted whatever other methodology you used and weren't able to explain it, you may not even get in the door, but you certainly, if you did, you wouldn't be as persuasive as someone who could integrate the AI or any other tool into their report and into their presentation.
Yeah, responding to the question, what do judges look for? I find it amusing that the Rules Committee had to restate Rule 702. They pretty clearly indicated that they didn't intend any substantive changes, but they needed to provide greater emphasis because, as Michael pointed out at the outset, judges have a tendency when they're faced with a Daubert motion to simply say, I'll let it go to the jury, and then they can give it whatever weight they think it deserves. Well, it's really clear now that we, the judges, in a jury trial or a bench trial, have to be the gatekeepers at the front end of the process. And so what we look for is exactly what the rule tells us we must look for. As Judge Driscoll pointed out, first, do you have the basis to be an expert? Are you a person, either by training or experience or otherwise, somebody who should be offering that testimony? Next, will the testimony help us? But then significantly, we have to make sure that the facts and data on which you're relying are reliable. And in my state, for example, everything that an expert relies on has to be in evidence. That's not the rule under the federal system, but some states do that. And then I think the hardest part, as Michael pointed out, is explain to us the methodology you're using and why that methodology is producing a reliable result. And by reliable, I mean, can it be replicated? If I change the data set, will it change along with the data set to once again produce the same sort of outcome, although the number may be different at the end if we're trying to figure out what a business is worth, for example.
So I have a question, and that is the use of AI, is our use as professionals pushing us more in the direction of recognizing that we have to have the ability to communicate what we did? We have to be able to tell the story. We have to have more persuasive skills, more explanatory skills, and we have to approach each case from the standpoint of we have to tell a story to 12 people who, most of whom do not have the same backgrounds that we have. Many of them are afraid of AI. Many of them think it's voodoo. And it relies heavily upon our ability to tell the story.
I think that's exactly right. And you are not alone as experts worrying about the effect of AI. Lawyers are worried about it. Teachers are worried about it. Parents are worried about it. And I think that's just because it's something new, relatively new, and it's something that everybody is talking about. 80 years ago or 100, probably 100 years ago, when the radio came out, people feared having radios because it was going to take away family time. It was going to take away the ability to read. Didn't happen. And then television, that was going to take away people's ability to have conversation. And maybe it has to some extent. At the same time, it brought people together. Everybody's staring at this blank screen. Now we're worried about the effect, of course, of electronic devices and eliminating conversation. And yet, I don't know, I went to a bunch of holiday parties over the last couple of weeks, and we were all talking about stuff that we saw on Netflix, and we're recommending shows to each other. So when we talk about AI, I do not hear REM's "End of the World" song playing in the background. I don't. I hear "A Whole New World" from Aladdin playing in the background, because it is a whole new world where you can get things done more quickly, but the essence of communicating it is still the hard part. It's still the art. So yeah, you can add 2 + 2 + 6 and square it and then get the cube root a lot more quickly than with your slide rule and your protractor. That's great. That's great. But then to be able to explain it as a teacher explains it to a student, that's the art of the expert.
I'd like to add a note of caution here, because unfortunately, technological developments have made judges more skeptical. Under the rules of evidence, for example, if a photograph was offered 50 years ago, everybody just assumed it was a valid photograph. And so it was almost automatically admitted as long as somebody could say what it depicted. These days, we're much more skeptical about whether a photograph that purports to depict something is a legitimate photograph or isn't. And that same degree of skepticism, I think, carries over to reports and analysis too. We want to make sure that you, as the expert, have devised the methodology and applied it rather than just relied on some sort of AI device to produce the result that you're presenting to us. So please excuse us when we're more skeptical these days than we might have been years ago, because I think it's appropriate for us to be that way.
Mm-hmm. And we need to anticipate the fact that the judges will be more skeptical, and we need to be prepared to respond in the appropriate way.
And let me add to that and recognize that lawyers and judges were once lawyers. Lawyers are petrified of three things. We're afraid of blood. That's why we're not doctors. We're afraid of arithmetic. That's why we're not money managers. And we're afraid of technology. So we're already afraid of you guys because you guys can do math that we don't know how to do, right? And then we add to that, layering in this technology. So really take your time. Take your time to see the fear and the trepidation in the judge's eyes. And you will see it, and you will see it. And then just take your time, Your Honor. I just want to explain that this methodology is nothing new. This is something that evaluators have been doing for years. We've just sped it up a little bit, just like a calculator sped it up. Oh, okay, Mr. Expert, Madam Expert, that sounds great. All right, so don't be afraid to slow down in your presentation because we just want to get it right. But as Judge Yates said, we're just we have some trepidation about it.
So I have a question. What happens? What do you do with an expert who walks into the courtroom, gives his or her testimony? It all looks beautiful. It all makes a lot of sense. And then under cross-examination, opposing counsel demonstrates that the expert's methodology, the expert's evidence that some important component of the expert's work, be it the process or the evidence, was incorrect, or was a hallucination, or was a misapplication in an area where the expert relied upon AI.
I would offer a couple of thoughts about that. First of all, I don't think you need to apologize for using AI in some part of your analysis. I know people fear that question because they think that takes them down a path where they have to concede this isn't really their work. I don't think that's the case at all. If you're going to rely on AI, just make sure, as I said at the beginning, that you can defend every line in your report and every bit of your analysis. The way lawyers get in trouble using AI is when they don't go back and check and they produce briefs with hallucinated citations that are, for all practical purposes, flat made up. And so I don't know that you have to defend the reliability of the AI platform so much as you have to defend the reliability of what you say.
Yep. Right.
So that brings up another thought that I had, and something that actually came up in the program that we presented in Salt Lake City in September. We hear so much about using AI platforms to do the work that we used to do manually before. We used to do it ourselves, do our research, evaluate the methodology, identify the methodology we're going to use, research the industry, research the economy, research the personnel, research the leadership of the company, apply the methodology to the financial statements, do the financial analysis, do all of the work that we would previously have an associate, a competent, capable associate do.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes up with a report, and we've got this report here. And most of what I have seen in the world of AI, in the business valuation world or financial forensics, relates to applying AI to the preparation of your work product. One of the areas that I see as a huge area in which we can apply AI, and let me give you a situation. Let's say you do your work the way you did it before AI. You did your research, you put the whole thing together. You came up with your report, your analysis, your work paper file. What if you take that and upload that, enter that into an AI platform and ask questions like, what did I miss here? What did I miss here? Where did I go wrong? What did I misapply? What if you use AI as not the preparer of your work, but the reviewer of your work and the challenger of your work?
I think that's exactly the approach, and that's what I encourage judges and lawyers to do. Is you're still being paid for your judgment, you're being paid for your brain power, you're being paid for your experience. Use that first, rather than using AI and then running the risk of a confirmation bias that AI gives you something and you say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'll go with that." All right. So yeah, use your brain first. I don't think there's any harm at all though in using AI for that background information. Look, when I was in sixth grade, we all got assigned to write a paper about the history of pyramids. And we all went down to Encyclopedia Britannica and we kind of passed the book of pyramids around and we cribbed it into our own words. So we've been looking at sources for background information. It's the thinking part. Well, gee, why were the pyramids, why have they withstood thousands of years and why do they still exist? It's that thinking part that I think gets a little harder, and think about it first. That's what we're being paid to do. I think, oh, I see Alina coming on. That's the giant Driscoll. Stop talking. So I'm going to stop talking.
I have one other thing I'd like to add. And that is, and this came up at our program in September. One of the attendees, who I know is very experienced, very skilled, very cutting edge, she said another thing that she asked the AI platform to do for her is address the question of how is the jury going to react to this? How is the judge going to react to that? And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. So there are so many more applications that we can use, so many more applications beyond just preparing our work and formulating our and supporting us in the formulation of our opinions. So anyway, we are barely scratching the surface now, and I think this discussion is something that's going to go on for years and years and years. And it is going to be interesting until something new comes along.
Right.
Very, very good. How are we on time? Are we at the end, or?
Yes, we are at the end.
We are at the end. Then I'll cut it off.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Happy
Thank
holidays,
you.
everybody. Thanks so much. Ciao.
You too. Thank you for being with us today. So we have our polling question number 4. And now we also have Brien Jones. And for those who may not know him, and I don't think that is possible, right? But Brien is the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President of NACVA. And today he will be bringing the association headlines, but he's not only covering what is happening at a national level, he's also is going to be discussing developments that are globally. So, hi, Brien. Welcome.
Hello, Alina, and thank you to all the guests who have joined us on today's show. I will take a few moments to update you on the activity that's been happening at headquarters. We are a global association, so these updates not only impact the membership in the US, but also our members and credential holders around the world. I placed this slide deck, PowerPoint deck, in the chat, so you can download it from there. But Chinda Chuan, who manages our show monthly, will also distribute this PowerPoint deck to you as well. NACVA reinvests a significant amount of membership dues in benefits and resources that you can use. Notably, our standards board has released several updates this year. On the right-hand side of this slide, we have updated sample engagement letters. We have also updated comprehensive development and reporting checklists, as well as a new series of standards and ethics FAQs. These resources are provided along with the Standards and Ethics Hotline. We have comparison charts for domestic and international standards, a glossary of terms. So a lot of resources available for standards, but some new resources that were issued this year. We've also made some updates to the triannual recertification process in an effort to make recertification easier and more streamlined. Bonus points are no longer being issued for the recommended courses, but the recommended courses do reduce all or part of the recertification fee. The most notable part of the updated recertification is that you no longer have to report CPE that you've taken within your reporting cycle. You can attest to the CPE, but if you're audited, you must report the CPE you've taken during your reporting period by actually submitting the CPE certificates for the courses you've taken during the reporting period. If you hold a CPA license and have to renew it annually or every 2 years based on your state requirement, the CPE that you earn towards renewing your CPA license qualifies towards NACVA applicable CPE that you can apply toward your recertification. So if you hold the CPA license, when you're due for recertification next, you'll have a much easier time getting through your recertification requirement by attesting to having an active CPA license. We've also allowed for continuing education earned at the collegiate or university level to apply towards recertification. So if you're due for recertification this year, the compliance date is December 31st, which is just a few days away. Our member client services department has been reaching out to you for many, many months. And if you haven't completed your recertification, please contact us at headquarters. We'd be happy to support you through the process so you avoid inactive status. We're also pleased to announce that the Core Body of Knowledge textbook for business valuation will be published with John Wiley & Sons. If you took the CVA training, you're familiar with all of the materials that were available to you during that course. Coming in March of 2026 will be Business Valuation, Fundamentals, Techniques, and Theory, a textbook available to supplement, to accompany the training for the CVA, but you might be interested in purchasing this copy so you have an updated full manual and textbook on business valuation, fundamentals, techniques, and theory. It's available currently on the NACVA website and will be shipped in the spring of next year. We're pleased to announce some updates to our Master Analyst in Financial Forensics training program. In the first quarter of next year, we will have fully updated curriculum, as well as a self-study and a exam Q&A study guide. So if you're interested in pursuing this credential, there'll be a lot of updated resources available starting in the first quarter of next year. We have also updated the Certificate of Educational Achievement programs for several specialized areas of practice. These courses are between 15 and 20 hours of continuing education. They're available on demand. And upon completing them and the short quizzes, you can earn a Certificate of Educational Achievement. These programs were reviewed by our Litigation Forensics Board, and the board provided updates and comments to the instructors and developers of these courses, and they're all brand spanking new, available either live or on demand. And we want to call your attention to these trainings because they go overlooked if you're specializing in a particular area of practice. There's a lot of excellent continuing education available to you through these courses. There's been a lot spoken on this program about artificial intelligence. Quick updates. The association has produced quite a lot of resources, including establishing an Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Commission, publishing an advisory brief. There's an AI webinar series, AI Data University, articles in Quick Read, an AI readiness assessment, and next year we will launch an AI bootcamp. All of these resources are within the context of the professional standards. As has been touched on by several of the guests on this show, it's hard to get around artificial intelligence, and the association has taken the lead in developing resources for you, training, resources, and guidance as you grapple with how to integrate AI into your practice. We are pleased to announce that next spring we will launch a brand new NACVA website, member portal, and a whole fresh new look and approach to your user experience with NACVA. So as we go into the new year and looking to the future of our association, it will entail us evolving into a new engagement management system for our members and clients. So be on the lookout for a fresh new website and resources available on the website in the spring of next year. We don't want you to miss out on potential referrals. Several of our members have not updated their profile on the online directory, and if you have not, we encourage you to do that. We field queries at headquarters regularly from individuals, potential clients, judges, attorneys, business owners who are looking for experts like yourself. You can see through the profile here of Jeff Harwell that he has gone into his profile, added a picture, areas of practice, website, phone number, how you can contact him. And if you haven't done that, we encourage you to do so, because a potential client might not reach out to you if they cannot reach you or cannot understand a little bit more about your practice. So don't miss out on the referral potential. Log into your account on nacva.com and update your profile. We have introduced some new credential and membership types. Non-practicing CVA, non-practicing lifetime membership. These types of memberships and credentials are available to those who might be considering inactive practice or canceling your credential. If you have been with the association for several years and are looking to retire or slow down your practice, the lifetime membership may be of interest to you. There's also an honorary CVA status, and we've made some modifications to the emeritus status. These are have recently been issued through the association, and we wanted to bring your attention to these new credential and membership types if they apply to you, or if you're interested in them. We also published in the association news the second quarter of this year from each of the outgoing board chairs who whose tenures concluded in the spring of 2025. The board chairs provided an update as to all the activity that has happened across our governance boards over the last year. If you're interested in learning more about all of the work that is happening at headquarters and through our governance boards, I invite you to read this article that was published in the association news. And again, our association reinvests a significant portion of membership dues into programs and resources that are beneficial to you, and we're grateful to the elected board members who help support a lot of initiatives that will benefit you and the profession at large. We are also proud to announce that the 2026 Annual Business Valuation and Financial Litigation Super Conference will again be held in Salt Lake City. September 30th will be the recertification day. October 1st and 2nd will be the conference days. And Salt Lake City, if you're not aware, will host the Winter Olympic Games for the second time in 2034. Since the first Olympics in 2002, the city has seen a lot of economic growth, and the downtown, where the conference will be held at the Hyatt Regency Downtown Salt Lake, is a dynamic place to visit. It's a beautiful city framed by mountains. Our airport has been recently honored, recognized as one of the leading airports in the world. Fodor's Magazine and Travel and Leisure have also recently recognized Salt Lake City as being one of the strongest destinations in the Mountain West in the Western US. If you have not traveled to Salt Lake City ever, or if you have before, we encourage you to save the dates for our conference, which will be next fall, which is a beautiful time to be in Utah. And mark the dates and come and visit us for our conference. We will announce the pre-registration discounts and early registration discounts in January. And so we hope to see you in Salt Lake. We appreciate you joining AVW every month. We hope that you can continue joining us. And these are just a few of the updates and some news headlines that we've been working on here at headquarters to benefit you. And that is it. I'm out of breath. That was a lot.
Brien, so good to see you, my friend. It's always fun to hear from you. And just GACVA, ever since day one that I was involved, is just never slowed down. Just always looking to be on the edge and developing things to support the members. So good. Thank you, Brien.
You're welcome. Happy holidays to everyone.
Yeah, and I've got the conference blocked in my calendar, so hopefully y'all be there also. October's, I mean, that's a great time of year at Salt Lake. So
yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. All right, now we're going to move to our final segment it's our final segment for the year, basically, and that's growing and building your brand. And this is going to be with Michael Hill talking about risk transferring through insurance and everything. So, Michael, I see you're on. I'm gonna hand you the reins and let you take this one home.
Hi, Mel.
You gotta
Can you hear me?
Yeah, unmute.
Okay.
And Roberto
Michael,
Castro.
Perfect.
There you go.
So Michael, yeah, he's unmuted.
Sorry
we have
about
Chinda.
that.
Chinda's gonna be managing the slides at this point. So, hey, our guest today is Mike Hill, and he's going to be talking about expanding and improving our brand. And the focus today is on risk and insurance. This is a little profile of myself here at home. But the person that we want to focus on is Mike Hill, who is bringing the benefits here. And as you can see, he has extensive amount of experience in the area of insurance and brand building. So Michael, let's delve into the presentation right now and chat about insurance. So, Chinda, next slide.
Well,
there we
are
go.
thank you very much. We're part of 180 Intermediaries, which is part of Accession Risk Strategies, which is now part of Brown & Brown. It seems, we merged with 180 in October 21. Then 180 and Risk Strategies merged with Brown & Brown in 2025, and I guess it just keeps going.
Why is it? Michael, why don't you just give the attendees a sense as to what is happening in your space and driving this consolidation?
I think part of the reason that the merger occurred between Risk Strategies and Brown & Brown was that Risk Strategies was supported by venture capital. So there's always an exit strategy at the end of one of those projects. They'd been with those guys for probably about 10 or 12 years. So it was way past time to find somebody that could acquire them.
Brown and Brown is a very large publicly traded company, and I think the ultimate deal was $9.8 billion. So as risk strategies got larger and larger, their partners got fewer and fewer, and it took a long time.
There we go. So we got a fair amount of consolidation in your area.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of consolidation in the insurance arena right now.
Okay.
Some of it's just driven by how much capital is available. Tremendous amount of, that gigantic river of money.
Well, hopefully we'll get cheap insurance for our own personal coverage and professional insurance, right?
Well, this year could be a good year for that because there have not been a lot of cat claims. The hurricane season came through pretty well. So the catastrophe writers made pretty good money this year.
Perfect. All right. Next slide here, Chinda.
So I wanted to talk about transferring risk, and everybody knows that, as a small business valuation company or merger and acquisition consultant, it's difficult to come up with $1 million, $2 million, $5 million of capital in the case that you might need it. So transferring your risk to an insurance carrier, in our case, we use Lloyd's of London, which is one of the oldest and strongest carriers in the world, as our provider. And it just makes sense, just like when you're buying your auto liability or something like that, certain things are required of you either by the state, by the regulators, or by your clients who you sign contracts with. They're going to require a certain amount of capital be available in the case there's a problem. So transferring that risk to an insurance carrier makes all kinds of sense. Because coming up with $50,000 might be possible, but coming up with a couple $1 million gets difficult.
Next slide.
Could you go to the next slide?
Yep, there we go.
Okay. And there's other advantages to working with an insurance carrier to transfer your risk. And those carriers have a lot of experience with legal counsel. They've vetted various legal teams all across the United States. And in the event that you do need somebody to help defend you, those people have already been established. So there'll be like a claims counsel available in your area that has familiarity with professional liability claims, with the policy forms, and with the carrier, especially Lloyd's of London. We use a TPA, third-party administrator, for our claims, which is not unusual in this business. And those guys are incredible. They're well experienced attorneys that have been doing this for a long time, and they are always very helpful. Can we go to the next one?
Next slide.
So there's a couple of things that the insurance carriers will provide to you. First, they're probably going to provide your defense. So that's an important part of any claim. You're going to be going through the various procedures. There'll be depositions, gathering all of the information that needs to be gathered. There'll be depositions. There'll be mediations, maybe even arbitrations. And then, of course, there could be a trial. A lot of people try to avoid going to trial nowadays because of what they call nuclear verdicts and things like that. But we still wind up in court at times. So anyway, the insurance carriers help provide you with your defense. And then in the event that you are found to have been negligent and damages are awarded, then the insurance carrier will pay the indemnity payment. We don't have a lot of claims, but unfortunately, some of the ones we have are quite large. In 2025, we did settle one for just about $2 million, about $50,000 shy of $2 million. So, these claims do occur out there.
Next slide.
So I mentioned professional liability, and that's probably, there's probably three liability policies that most of us are worried about. Our commercial general liability, which really is, it provides coverages in case somebody comes to your office and falls down, or it has contractual liability coverage in it. It have some liquor liability coverage in it in case you have a little Christmas party, things like that. So the CGL can be important. The other coverage is cyber, which is becoming more and more important all the time, and then professional liability, which really is our specialty. It's known by a few names: malpractice insurance, there's emissions insurance, but all these coverages are for claims arising out of your professional services, and they. Could you go to the next
slide? Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
So, types of professional liability claims. Oops, I got a pull. Sorry, I can't read my own slide. So we've had disputes over valuations, disagreements about dates to control, things like that. We've had, unfortunately, several tax-oriented claims where somebody's tax liabilities were impacted by the valuation. The IRS at times disagrees with certain tax approaches, and we've also had some FINRA-oriented tax liability stuff lately.
Michael, if you could,
I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say, after you finish this over here, maybe you could just give us a hint as to that $2 million verdict, whether it was related to any of these 4 points.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've had some claimants that were our insured was sued for letting the employees know that there was going to be a potential sale. That wasn't very well appreciated. And then a little bit of expert witness testimony stuff. And I think our evaluators are becoming more and more leery of providing expert witness testimony. There's been some recent common law developed in that area. You wanted to go over the large claim that we had. The large claim, the $2 million claim, came out of what's it called? It's called conservation easement, which I was not very familiar with, probably because I've never purchased one, but I'm familiar with them now, and they scare me to death. Anyway, we had some owners of the conservation easements that were recommended by one of our clients. The Internal Revenue Service disagreed, and then proceeded to audit all of our clients' clients. So we had a lot of unhappy people. We were able to settle the claim for $2 million. The demand was $7 million. And the attorneys that we work with, our third-party administrator, they were also able to get a release of the personal liability of the principals of the firm. So we felt like we had a good result.
That's a good result. That's excellent.
Yeah,
next
even
slide.
though it was an expensive result, but a good result.
Chinda, next slide.
So some common things that we've found that generate claims. We have, these are not actuarially driven. These are anecdotal because, the number of claims is small, maybe 30 or 40 claims over the last few years, but the size of those claims has been pretty large. So there's not enough claims there for them to be actuarially significant. But just anecdotally, we've had, 3 or about 10% of our claims have been divorce oriented. We find that those claims are contentious to begin with. And 2 of those 3 claims have been, 6-figure settlements, one for $350,000 and one for $450,000. I guess associated with the divorce angle, family disputes. We've had issues with that. We've had issues with bankruptcy. And then surprisingly, we've had some issues with dual agency representation, where our client is representing both buyer and seller.
That's probably a real estate deal.
Actually, the most recent one was the liquor store.
Oh, there you go, broker seller. Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, commercial general liability is also an important coverage. We do sell it along with our professional liability. It protects against primarily slips and falls. People who are invited to your property might fall down the stairs, and then you have a suit. A lot of people will be required to have commercial general liability by their landlords if they're leasing office space. Those landlords will probably also want an additional insured endorsement on your policy. But it's going to damage, it's going to cover damages to other people's property. It provides some ancillary coverages to you, like personal injury, libel, slander, advertising injury, things like that. And then cyber coverage has become very, very, very popular, and probably for good reason. We found that during COVID, one of the things our insureds were doing was cutting back on their insurance coverages to try to save money, because nobody, early in COVID, nobody really knew what was going to happen, when the businesses would come back and things like that. So people were eliminating their cyber coverage, and we had one account that eliminated their cyber coverage, and then they had a problem with some social engineering where a $7 million earnout payment was redirected to inappropriate accounts. So the $7 million at the time it was transferred to a scammer's accounts. The people that were involved with it were able to get some of the money back, which I was amazed by. But these cyber coverages are becoming so important nowadays. They're just
Mike, I'm getting notice that we're out of time, and then
I'm sorry.
They're asking. No, that's good. So we're asking it. They're asking us to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, how about thank you?
Okay. Well, we'll stay tuned.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll stay tuned for more cyber coverage in the future. Thank you so much for your time and sharing this information with us, Michael.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael.
We do
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Roberto.
My pleasure.
And thank you for all of you who are here and attended our final AVW of 2025. We will be back here January 12th, 2026, with a whole nother program that is gonna be fun, but we're gonna start off the year in a great way. So here's to wishing you and your families a pleasant, amazing holiday season, Christmas, New Year's, and all the things, and the blessings you all deserve. So we'll see you back here in January. Cheers for now.
Feliz Navidad.